as a practicing artist myself, that anxiety of when we are delivering something creative, we're carrying our soul on our sleeve. And so then when we go into an environment where we are networking or trying to get to know the people that we're co-creating with, you're in a room with your soul on your sleeve, and it can be a really anxious, difficult time for people.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mindset for Creatives. This podcast is the second in a series dedicated to quiet or introverted people. If you have a creative child or student who is on the shy side or know somebody who does, this podcast is for you. My guest is Nikki Rasman, who runs Blueprint Coaching. Nikki is a professional life coach and experienced parenting coach and is herself a parent of teenagers. She is also a professional artist and has 25 years of experience in the corporate sector managing and facilitating creative events. I met with Nikki and asked her for some solutions to challenges faced by shyer people and how us parents and teachers can better understand and assist in reducing levels of anxiety in the mindsets of our creative, quiet people when in larger social gatherings. I'd like to take this opportunity now to invite you to visit the links below for free mindset coaching materials and contact links to both Blueprint Coaching and my one-on-one and group mindset coaching services for musicians and creatives. Thank you for listening. This is Mindset for Creatives. Hello, Nikki. Thank you very much for joining me on my Mindset for Creatives program. How are you up there in sunny Queensland, Australia?
I am fine today. Thank you, Steve, for asking, and thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here today.
And for our listeners and those of you who are viewing, Nikki is a professional coach. She coaches with neurolinguistic programming. She's a life coach, and she runs Blueprint Coaching, which is the name of her business. And within that, she's got several very interesting and successful programs, such as Leadership in the Living Room and Cool, Calm, and Connected. Now, I've known Nikki for a while now. In one of our meetups, I talked to her about some of my coaching clients and the challenges they've been going through as a quiet person or an introvert or just somebody who's shy. And in particular, I've been working with a lot of young people coming to me asking for advice on how they can manage themselves in large social gatherings where they feel elements of anxiety coming on. Now, Nikki works on a regular basis with young people, and this is a common topic with your clients, isn't it, Nikki?
Absolutely. And as a practicing artist myself, I feel that anxiety of when we are delivering something creative, we're carrying our soul on our sleeve. And so then when we go into an environment where we are networking or trying to get to know the people that we're co-creating with, you're in a room with your soul on your sleeve, and it can be a really anxious, difficult time for people. So I 100% understand that perhaps once you're in a creative environment, that anxiety is almost heightened because the stakes are higher.
So, Nikki, as you know, I work with a lot of musicians and creative people across various industries. What would you say to somebody who has a creative job as a musician or an artist, or maybe they're hired by a company to design a logo? And then there's that big function and that quiet person who feels anxiety to a degree when there are large groups of people and they have to answer a lot of questions and there's a lot of noise. How would you suggest somebody like that handle themselves in these situations?
Yeah, Steve. So there's one really simple way to go about this, and it's everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're introvert or not. This is the number one tool to have in your kit, in your toolbox. And that is, the really simple state of active listening. So we all have this innate need, humans, to feel seen and to feel heard. And the simplest way to build rapport with someone is to make them feel or assist them in feeling seen and heard. And how do we do that? We simply listen to them. So when you enter a room and it's full of people and you're thinking, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? You actually just need to listen to other people to get the ball rolling. And then we have this wonderful skill called mirroring or paraphrasing, where you just actually just pick up on some key words. So say, Steve, we might be having a chat and you might be telling me about some fantastic piece that you're working on. Now, I don't even have to play the tuba to say, Steve, sounds like this musical piece is really special to you. It sounds really important. Tell me more about that. So I am automatically validating you as a person and making you feel special. And then allowing you to go and explore the gorgeousness of your creativity and share that with me. I don't have to say that much to make you feel special. And once you feel special, we've got rapport.
I like the way you said listen for keywords and mirror that back, ask a lot of questions. So, one of the pieces of advice I give to introverted type people when they are feeling a bit overwhelmed with a very sort of an overbearing extroverted personality, I say, just do listening because they will do most of the talking. So you can relax. Give them the job to do the talking. You don't have to think about what you need to say. You can just ask them questions,
Yeah.
highlighting on the things that excite them the most. And for this, you can really watch and feel the body language. If they get really exuberant, when you see them animated and you can feel them animated, you listen to their language and you repeat that back. Just like you said, oh, so you're designing a new logo for such and such a company? And I love this, Nikki. This is great. Nikki's advice. Tell me more about that. You might have just bought yourself 10 minutes of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, tell me more. Great phrase to pull out of your toolkit. How did you start that? Or how did you know that this was your calling? If someone gives someone the opportunity to speak about themselves, if they are an extrovert, you've 10 minutes, Steve, you might have caught yourself an hour. You know, you
I don't know
you
anybody
all,
like that who would talk for an hour about
no,
something they're
me
interested
neither.
about.
You only have to encourage someone and, as I said, make them feel seen and heard, and you would be in an incredibly powerful position. It's only when they then turn and say to you, and what about you? You only have to have a couple of things up your sleeve. And generally, the easiest way to respond to that is, I really resonated with. And then you pick out something they've said and you say, that's something, that's quite similar to my career path, or I feel the same way when I'm creating. Um, and then you can flip it back onto them and ask them a little bit more about their journey. So we don't have to be incredibly articulate linguists to work the room. The room can work for us in that environment.
I think one of the reasons why quiet people or introverted people feel a little bit stressful or a bit anxious in these large settings is because they feel like they have to talk a lot. But as you've
Mm.
just explained to us, you don't have to talk much at all if you're a quiet person. You can just listen, and with these language skills Nikki is providing us, you can encourage that other person to do most of the talking, and you become a listener and a nodder and an uh-huh-er. Wow, that sounds amazing. Tell me more about that. Oh, and that really sounds important to you. And when did you start doing that? So what sort of other language skills and say maybe I'm thinking of like flashcard, imaginary flashcards in the pocket. That extroverted person is going blah 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 blah. I'm so stressful. Tell me more about that. Um, wow, that sounds really interesting. As mentioned before, that sounds very
Yeah.
important to you. Uh, What do you like best about blah blah blah? Do you have any other language skill tips you can give us?
There's certainly, it's not just about being present and listening I guess, from a linguistics perspective. There's also your body language and the way that you use your body to engage with others is going to be very empowering for you and for everyone else. So if you are leaning into the conversation, if you're talking to someone and they're having eye contact with you, maintain eye contact. If they're sort of standing with one or seated with one leg crossed over the other, you may just cross at the ankles, just to replicate small parts of your body language so that you build rapport and you'll both relax into that.
And speaking of body language, one thing that I have noticed in my working life of 35 years or so of international musicians of the highest stature is there's a lot of chest out, shoulders back, speaking up sort of body language of these sort of stoic, proactive, extroverted musicians and artists and the CEOs, the admins, the sponsors who turn up to these things. And so one of the other pieces of advice I've given to my shyer people is that match that body language. Chest up, shoulders back, match how they're looking up, and don't be afraid of the eye contact. Don't be the kind of person who's just looking for something to look at, because if they're talking to, if you've said to them, tell me more about that, that sounds very important to you, you've got to match their eye contact. You can't start going, gee, I've asked that question, now I'm going to look down and maybe look in my phone. You can't do that, can you?
Yeah,
What do you do?
because
What do you do if you're feeling
language,
so shy and overwhelmed? What do you do in this situation?
well, you know that I have that, I'll share with your listeners, I have a particular memory of a stressful environment that I have created into a comedy, so that I have a set of dancers behind this particular conversation that happened that are doing high kicks. And so now, when I find myself in that situation where I am intimidated by a particular person, and we all are, extrovert or introvert, um, I imagine that this particular scenario is happening with dancers doing high kicks behind in full costume. For me, it just breaks down the intensity and allows me to smile at myself and give myself some compassion. And I think there's that, we have that ability to set a boundary, that we need to maintain a respectful boundary. And when I say self-respecting boundary, I mean that I often describe it as our self-respect sits out here as a little wall. Now we can build a little wall of self-respect. And for me, it's not about the wall. It's about the moat in between me and the wall. And I've spoken before about, your moat can be full of sharks and it can be a quite treacherous, territory. Or my moat is full of mermaids and they've got my back. And so I constantly feel supported by my boundaries. And I'm able to say, respectfully, I just have to excuse myself one moment. And or thank you for the kind invitation, but no, thank you. There's ways of extracting yourself from stressful situations where you come across as not rude, rather polite and empowered. And if you feel empowered, then you're going to build a mindset around these situations.
Mindset, building a mindset. Nikki, tell us more about how to build a mindset of boundaries, especially if you just want to have your own quiet time.
Building a mindset is, a lot of people want to go from the mouse to the lion in one step. And they don't understand why it's such a big mountain they've got to climb. And it's really because the tiny weeny mouse still has to grow into sort of the biggest city rat first. And then the city rat turns into the scrawny street cat, who then turns into the highly preened house Maine Coon, I guess, who then turns into the lioness, who then turns into the leader of the pride. And so to expect to go from the tiny little grey mouse into the leader of the pride in one step is impossible. And it seems just out of the realm of probability for most people. And that's because it is. So if you set yourself small goals and small steps, and then you just celebrate each step as you go, then you will gradually improve your mindset. You know, I once read, and since then I really try to work around this, is it's not about stepping outside your comfort zone. It's about stretching your comfort zone while you're in it. So it's sort of like the trousers you wear on Christmas Day, right? You want them to expand and accommodate your growth. So, you know, perhaps you're going to an event tonight and you're feeling anxious about having to engage with lots of other people. You might set yourself a small goal. I'm going to use 3 key phrases. Tell me more. That sounds important to you. And I really resonated with. So you practice those 3. You might even have them on a little card in your wallet. And then you might say, and I'm going to be mindful of my body language and match one thing. I'm just going to look at how I stand tonight. And that's it. And then you can just do that and just have 10 minutes of success. And then celebrate that success. People are going, oh, I was so good last week. I lasted 10 minutes in a room. Yeah. And I say, how did you celebrate that? Oh, I didn't celebrate it. Well, what's the reward for your beautiful brain and soul if you don't celebrate it? So it may well be that you know, for me, I would go to the art shop and drop my credit card on the counter. For someone else, it might be that you go and buy a beautiful musical score, or, you know, have an hour session with Steve. It depends on what you are, but set goals that are small and attainable of implementing use of language, use of body language, and then give yourself permission to be the mouse.
Wow, Nikki, this is all fantastic. Another thing that you and I encounter with our clients is that age difference. So, for example, it might be somebody new in a workplace and they have middle-aged or older bosses and CEOs that they need to talk to. Parents and teenagers, what would I tell my child if I had a shy child or an introverted child who said, I don't want to go to that function, Mom, Dad, because it gives me anxiety, and they might even want to take some medication for that. Now, before we get to that point, what advice do you have to the parents out there and the teachers out there who have kids who would be challenged by these situations?
Yeah, great question. So the thing to understand about parents is, and it's a parallel universe with the work environment, which is why Leadership in the Living Room is the program that it is it takes those skills of understanding that management leadership role and applies it to the parenting teen role. So let's explore that. If you're in an environment where you have someone who is in your team, or you're a parent with a teenager, is a particularly interesting part of life because they no longer need micromanaging the way a real junior burger in your company does. You know, when someone enters the company or someone enters perhaps a junior orchestra, they really need to be micromanaged, and you need to check in with them, and they may need mentoring quite significantly. And the parents have to get involved and they nag them. Have you done your practice? Have you done this? You know, have you polished your tuba? So that's sort of that beginning, that real junior state. Then we get into a teenage brain, which can be the same brain up until about age 24. So, maybe some of these young creatives that you're working with are still in this stage where their prefrontal cortex is what's called pruning. And what happens is the hormones flood in and the whole thing turns to mashed potato. And it completely rewires what they're doing. So that's why you have these young adults, and one day they're astonishingly articulate, they're on fire. You think, oh my God, I've done such a good job raising my child. And the next day they can't unpack the dishwasher or tie their shoelaces because the hormones have changed, and all of a sudden it's really difficult for them to see through the fog. It's like fog. And the other thing that happens in that stage of life is that they spend a lot of time in the amygdala, the reptilian brain. And we know that that part of the brain is your fight, fright, freeze part of the brain. So if you imagine you've got these young adults who don't have the ability to move forward into their prefrontal cortex and logically think through the process of what is happening. Am I really being attacked by a bear? And what can I do about it? They may not physically be able to go through that and put themselves in that logical emotional state. So we really have to support our young people in understanding that's what's happening and listen to them, and then come up with some tools and use some tools where we bring them back into the prefrontal cortex as much as possible. And that can be tricky, right?
If you were to give us right now a very quick and easy to remember, so you don't have to write it down, sort of anti-anxiety routine we can go through in our head when we go to these social situations, especially being a younger person, being surrounded by people twice your age or more, what would that be?
Good question. So the first one is, can you get yourself out of the amygdala brain? Can you get yourself out of that fright, flight, freeze? So a tool where you logically list something, as I just said, a tool where you talk about, okay, I'm in this new room. What are 5 different colors that people are wearing? Blue, red, green, right? What are 4 different hairstyles I can see? What's 3 different sounds? I mean, if you're dealing with musicians, they're so auditory. So let's really hone in on that. What are 5 sounds that I can hear? I can hear a deep booming voice. I can hear a funny little piccolo type voice. The timpani voice of the conductor or the head stakeholder, the key stakeholder, and actually marry it back to an instrument. So you're really going on that really logical level, taking the emotion out of it, and hopefully bringing a little bit of humor in. Because if you associate a key stakeholder with a timpani, I mean, that's got to be a bit of fun, right? So, perhaps do a bit of visualization and connect with your key strengths. Then understand you don't have to say a thing. But what I would really love to encourage everyone is to also have your elevator pitch ready to go. And, Steve, you and I talk about elevator pitches a lot and how to introduce ourselves so it feels authentic. So if you're a young person, how do you introduce yourself? My name's Nikki Rasman and I'm a parenting coach. I help working parents reconnect with their teens. It's not a long-winded piece. It's got to roll off the tongue and it's got to feel like, if it's on purpose, it'll fill you with warmth. Work with a friend, do it in pairs because it's really tough. Or, reach out to Steve and I, we'll help you. Have a little introduction. My name's Stephanie and I'm a flautist and I really enjoy being part of a larger collaborative group like this orchestra.
I love that.
It's that simple.
I love that. You've introduced your name. You've told them what you do. and you've told them what you enjoy, and you could probably throw in where you're from. Hi, I'm Steve. I'm originally from California. I play the tuba in the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and the thing I love most about playing in the orchestra is playing live music for all these people like you. So that's my elevator pitch. I'm an introvert. My heart is beating like crazy. My palms are sweaty. I got it out. I'm not going to get 20 questions now. They're not going to ask me where I'm from, how long I've been in the orchestra, what I like about it. They're going to go, all right, wow. And then I'll say, what's your name? What do you do? And then tell me more about that. I've just bought myself 10 minutes, I think. Whew, looking up, chest proud. That one's a timpani. That one is a piccolo.
Yeah.
That one's a saxophone. And matching the eye movements of the person you're talking to. So if they're sort of looking behind a little bit, you can do it also, but a little bit less. I love that. Everybody's an instrument in the room. Oh boy, I'm not going to be feeling any anxiety next time I go to one of these big gatherings.
No, and for me, I look for the Mona Lisa. There's always a Mona Lisa in the room. Have a bit of fun with it.
So Nikki, how would somebody reach out to you and find out about your coaching services, whether it's the leadership in the living room program or just one-on-one life coaching or careers coaching? How would one contact you?
So Steve, you can reach out to me through my website, which is in the chat box below. So that's www.blueprintcoaching.com.au, or my social media handle is Blueprint Coaching with Nikki. And you can reach out to me through any of those, or reach out through Steve. Steve and I are constantly connected to each other. We'd love to have a chat, and he and I can help you and find your best fit moving forward.
Wow, Nikki, thank you very much for joining me and being my guest today. Your advice and your knowledge and your wisdom on all of these subjects has been very useful and very helpful. For those of you listening or watching, if you would like to receive a bullet point list of tips from Nikki on today's session, there is the link below that you can click and get that. So thank you again, Nikki, for coming on, and everybody, thank you for listening and watching.
Take care, people. Look out for the Mona Lisa and the timpani in the room.
Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share. And don't forget to click the link below to access your free self-coaching resources sent directly to you. Also, please visit Blueprint Coaching and Steve Rosset Coaching at the links below, and I look forward to being with you in the upcoming podcasts.